Lady Catherine Ashford moved through the crystalline halls of the Centaurian embassy with practiced grace. Her emerald silk gown swept the polished floors as alien dignitaries bowed their heads in respect. To every observer, she was exactly what she appeared to be, the daughter of Earth's most influential ambassador, a woman of refinement who had never known hardship. The truth was far different. "Your Grace," chittered Ambassador Zekthor, his insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. "The Dominion Council grows impatient with Earth's refusal to surrender the outer colonies. Perhaps your father might reconsider." Catherine smiled, the expression never reaching her pale blue eyes. "My dear Ambassador, you know Father values peaceful solutions. Surely the Council can wait a few more days for his response." What she didn't say was that her father had been dead for 3 months. What she also didn't mention was that the message she'd sent to Earth's military command would bring the Fifth Fleet to this sector within hours. The Centaurians believed they were negotiating with a naive diplomat's daughter. They had no idea they were dealing with Colonel Catherine Ashford, the most decorated human soldier in the galaxy. The embassy's grand ballroom buzzed with conversation in a dozen alien languages. Tall, blue-skinned Andromedan traders discussed shipping routes with stocky gray Martonian miners. Elegant Elysian nobles, their translucent skin shimmering, debated poetry with enthusiastic Terran scholars. Catherine recognized each species, their strengths, weaknesses, and combat capabilities. Old habits died hard. Lady Ashford, purred Duchess Velterra, an Andromedan woman whose beauty was matched only by her cunning. "You seem distracted tonight. Perhaps the burden of representing Earth weighs heavily on such delicate shoulders." Catherine's hand instinctively moved toward where her combat knife would normally rest. Instead, she found only the jeweled brooch at her shoulder. She forced herself to relax. "Not at all, Duchess. I find these gatherings quite enlightening." Through the massive windows, she could see the 3 moons of Centaurus Prime hanging in the star-filled sky. Somewhere in that darkness, Dominion warships waited for the order to attack human colonies. The aliens believed humans were weak, dependent on their technology and diplomacy. They thought Earth's children were soft creatures who had never truly fought for survival. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "If I may," interrupted General Craxon, a massive reptilian creature whose species had conquered 17 star systems. "Your people's military seems rather limited in scope. Perhaps Earth would benefit from Dominion protection." The threat wasn't subtle. Catherine had read Craxon's military record. He'd ordered the orbital bombardment of entire cities, turning populated worlds into glass. The monster standing before her, sipping imported wine and making small talk, had killed millions. "Earth has always managed its own affairs quite well," Catherine replied, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "We prefer cooperation to conquest." Craxon's laugh was like grinding stone. "Cooperation is a luxury only the strong can afford, little flower. The weak serve or die." Several alien dignitaries nodded in agreement. The galaxy was a harsh place where might determined right. Humans, in their estimation, were a young species that had only recently achieved interstellar travel. They had avoided major conflicts through clever diplomacy and strategic alliances, but many believed this was simply because they were too weak to fight. Catherine excused herself and walked onto the embassy's garden terrace. The night air carried the scent of strange flowers and the distant hum of the city below. She pulled out a small communication device disguised as a jewelry case. "Phoenix to nest," she whispered. "Package delivered. Guests are eager for the party to begin." "Confirmed, Phoenix," came the encrypted reply. "Party preparations complete. 30 minutes until arrival." Catherine closed the device and returned to the ballroom. Her smile was radiant as she rejoined the diplomatic gathering, but her mind was calculating distances, exits, and defensive positions. The elegant woman in the expensive gown was gone, replaced by the tactical computer that was Colonel Catherine Ashford's battle-hardened mind. The aliens continued their veiled threats and diplomatic posturing, unaware that death was approaching through the void. They saw Earth's representative as a beautiful but helpless girl who could be intimidated into surrender. In 30 minutes, when the first human warships dropped out of hyperspace, they would discover that humanity had not survived this long in a hostile galaxy by being weak. They would learn that behind every human diplomat, every human trader, every human citizen, lay the heart of a warrior. But first, they would meet Lady Catherine Ashford as she truly was. As the evening wore on, Catherine moved through the crowd like a dancer, charming and gracious. She complimented the Andromedans on their homeworld's beauty, discussed trade agreements with the Martonians, and even shared a joke with the insectoid ambassador. To everyone present, she was the perfect example of human civilization, refined, peaceful, and utterly harmless. None of them noticed how she kept track of every security guard's position. None saw how her eyes constantly swept the room, marking weapons and potential threats. And none realized that beneath her elegant exterior, Colonel Catherine Ashford was preparing for war. The clock was ticking, and soon the masquerade would end. The first sign of trouble came when the embassy's lights flickered. Catherine was in the middle of a conversation with a group of Elysian nobles when the building's main power grid stuttered for just a moment. To the other guests, it was merely an annoyance. To Catherine, it was a warning. Her eyes immediately moved to the security stations around the room. The guards looked confused, checking their equipment and speaking quietly into their communication devices. Something was jamming the embassy's systems, and Catherine had a good idea what it was. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Ambassador Zekthor from the center of the ballroom, his voice carrying over the crowd. "It appears we're experiencing minor technical difficulties. Please continue enjoying the evening while our staff resolves the issue." Catherine smiled and nodded with the rest of the crowd, but her hand moved to adjust her jewelry. Hidden within her necklace was a small scanner that could detect energy signatures. What it showed made her blood run cold. 3 Dominion battlecruisers had just entered the system and were moving toward the embassy. The aliens weren't here to negotiate. They were here to capture or kill Earth's diplomatic representative, removing humanity's voice from the galactic community permanently. "Excuse me," she said politely to the Elysian nobles. "I believe I need some fresh air." But as she moved toward the terrace, General Craxon stepped into her path. His massive reptilian form blocked her way, and his smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. "Leaving so soon, Lady Ashford? But the evening has barely begun." "I'm just feeling a bit overwhelmed," Catherine replied, maintaining her innocent facade. "So many new faces and ideas to process." "Indeed," Craxon growled. "Perhaps we could discuss some of those ideas privately. I have a proposal that might interest your father." The general's clawed hand moved toward her arm, and Catherine saw 2 of his security guards positioning themselves nearby. This wasn't a request for a private conversation. This was an abduction attempt. Catherine's training took over. Without changing her pleasant expression, she calculated the distance to each threat, identified improvised weapons within reach, and planned her escape route. But she couldn't act yet. Not while maintaining her cover. "How thoughtful of you, General. However, I believe protocol requires a chaperone for such meetings. Perhaps tomorrow we could arrange something more formal?" Craxon's eyes narrowed. "I'm afraid I must insist. The matter is quite urgent." The general's hand closed around Catherine's arm, and she felt the strength in his grip. He could easily crush human bones, and he wanted her to know it. Around them, other guests continued their conversations, unaware of the dangerous game being played. Catherine's smile never wavered, but something cold settled behind her eyes. "General, I would appreciate it if you released my arm. Or what, little flower? Will you call for help? Will you faint like a proper lady?" The condescension in his voice was the final straw. Catherine had spent months listening to these aliens mock humanity, threaten her people, and treat her like a helpless decoration. Her patience was at an end. "Actually," she said quietly, her voice taking on a different quality, "I was thinking something else entirely." In one fluid motion, Catherine grabbed Craxon's wrist with her free hand and twisted sharply while stepping back. The move used the general's own strength against him, forcing him to release her arm or have his wrist broken. Surprised by her sudden competence, he let go and stumbled forward. Before he could recover, Catherine's hand shot out and struck a nerve cluster at the base of his neck. The giant reptilian warrior dropped to one knee, paralyzed by the precisely targeted blow. The entire exchange took less than 3 seconds and appeared to most observers like an accidental collision. But the general's guards saw their commander fall and immediately reached for their weapons. Catherine was faster. She grabbed a crystal wineglass from a nearby table and threw it with perfect accuracy at the first guard's hand, causing him to drop his energy pistol. In the same motion, she spun and delivered a kick to the second guard's solar plexus, doubling him over in pain. The elegant lady in the expensive gown was gone. In her place stood a predator who moved with deadly precision. "My goodness," Catherine said loudly, her voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. "How clumsy of me. I do hope everyone is all right." The other guests stared in shock. The refined Earth ambassador's daughter had just disabled 3 trained Dominion soldiers in a matter of seconds, and she was acting as if nothing had happened. Ambassador Zekthor chittered nervously as he approached. "Lady Ashford, perhaps we should call medical assistance for the general." "Of course," Catherine agreed, smoothing her dress, though I suspect he simply had a reaction to something he ate. These diplomatic dinners can be so stressful. General Craxton struggled to his feet, his face a mask of rage and humiliation. What are you?" Catherine tilted her head innocently. "I'm afraid I don't understand the question, General. I'm simply Catherine Ashford, daughter of Ambassador Richard Ashford. Though I must say, I did take some self-defense classes at university. One can never be too careful when traveling to unfamiliar worlds. Self-defense classes. The understatement would have been amusing if the situation weren't so dangerous." Catherine had trained with the best military instructors in human space, learned fighting techniques from a dozen different worlds, and survived combat in conditions that would break most people's minds. The communication device in her jewelry vibrated once. The signal meant the human fleet had arrived at the edge of the system and was moving into position. Soon the real negotiation would begin, but first Catherine needed to survive the next few minutes. Around the ballroom she could see alien security forces moving into position. The diplomatic gathering was becoming a trap and she was the target. General Craxton's voice was a low growl. "Seize her." Catherine sighed and reached up to remove her elegant necklace. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this. These clothes are quite expensive and I'd hate to get them dirty." As armed guards rushed toward her from all directions, Lady Catherine Ashford disappeared completely. In her place stood Colonel Catherine Ashford, and the aliens were about to learn why humans had earned their place among the stars. The crystal chandelier above the ballroom exploded into fragments as Catherine dove beneath the first volley of energy blasts. She rolled behind a marble pillar as alien guards opened fire, their weapons turning elegant furniture into smoking ruins. Catherine's evening gown was already torn from her acrobatic movement, but she didn't care. The time for pretense was over. "Surrender, human," shouted a Martonian captain, his gray skin glistening with sweat. "You are outnumbered 20-1. Catherine's laugh echoed through the ballroom, cold and sharp. 20-1? Is that supposed to be intimidating? She reached into her hair and pulled out what appeared to be decorative pins. With a quick twist, they transformed into small but lethal throwing knives. Her first throw took down the Martonian captain before he could fire another shot. The blade found the gap in his armor with surgical precision. The remaining guards spread out, trying to surround her. Catherine counted 17 hostiles, each armed with military-grade weapons. They moved with the confidence of professional soldiers who had never faced a human in combat. They were about to receive an education. Catherine sprinted from behind the pillar, using the scattered diplomatic guests as cover. Terrified aliens dove for safety as she moved through their midst like a hunting cat. An Andromedan guard raised his rifle, and Catherine grabbed a crystal sculpture from a nearby table, hurling it with enough force to shatter his weapon and send him sprawling. She reached a second pillar and paused, assessing the tactical situation. The guards were positioning themselves for a coordinated assault, but they were making the same mistake every alien military force made when fighting humans. They assumed she would behave logically, predictably. Humans, Catherine reflected as she prepared her next move, were rarely logical when their survival was at stake. Instead of staying behind cover like any sane person would, Catherine launched herself directly at the largest concentration of enemies. She grabbed a heavy silver serving tray as she moved, using it as both shield and weapon. Energy blasts scorched the metal as she closed the distance. Then she spun and threw the tray like a discus. It struck 2 guards simultaneously, sending them crashing into a wall. An Elysian soldier tried to grab her from behind, but Catherine dropped low and swept his legs, sending him tumbling. As he fell, she relieved him of his sidearm, a compact energy pistol that hummed with deadly power. The weapon felt comfortable in her hand. Catherine had trained with every alien weapon design in known space, and she put that knowledge to immediate use. 3 quick shots dropped 3 guards before they could react to her sudden firepower. Impossible, breathed Ambassador Zekthor from where he cowered behind an overturned table. Humans don't fight like this. You're supposed to be diplomats, merchants, explorers. Catherine paused in her deadly dance to look at the insectoid ambassador. You really don't know anything about humanity, do you? A massive Centaurian enforcer charged at her, counting on his size and strength to overwhelm the small human woman. Catherine waited until the last moment, then dropped to one knee and fired directly upward. The energy blast caught him center mass, and his momentum carried him over her to crash into the far wall. The remaining guards were becoming desperate. They began firing wildly, no longer caring about the civilian aliens caught in the crossfire. Catherine's expression hardened. She could tolerate threats against herself, but innocents were being endangered. Time to end this. Catherine holstered the energy pistol and reached for her shoes. Like everything else she wore, they weren't what they seemed. The heels concealed micro-explosives, small but perfectly placed charges that could disable security systems or create diversions. She threw both shoes in different directions. When they detonated, the embassy's remaining lights went out, plunging the ballroom into darkness. The aliens had made another crucial error in their assessment of humans. They assumed that because humanity relied on technology, humans were helpless without it. But Catherine had trained in dozens of environments, including complete darkness. Her other senses guided her as she moved through the black ballroom like a ghost. The sounds of combat continued. The whir of energy weapons, the crash of furniture, occasional screams as guards discovered they were fighting something far more dangerous than they had imagined. But these sounds were growing fewer and more distant. When the emergency lights finally activated, casting an eerie red glow over the scene, Catherine stood alone in the center of the room. Around her, 17 alien guards lay unconscious or worse. She hadn't killed them all. She was a soldier, not a murderer, but each one had been neutralized with clinical efficiency. Her elegant gown was in ruins, torn and stained. Her carefully styled hair hung loose around her shoulders, but her pale blue eyes were steady and calm, showing no sign of the exertion she had just endured. General Craxon struggled to his feet, still feeling the effects of her earlier nerve strike. What are you?" Catherine smiled, but it was nothing like the polite diplomatic smile she had worn earlier. This expression belonged to a predator. "I'm exactly what I told you, General. I'm Catherine Ashford. But you might know me better by my military designation. Colonel Catherine Ashford, formerly of the Terran Special Forces. I've fought in the Vega Rebellion, the Proxima Border Wars, and the corporate conflicts of the Outer Rim. I've led missions on 17 different worlds and commanded forces against everything from space pirates to rogue AI systems." She walked toward the general, her bare feet making no sound on the marble floor. "You see, humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We prefer negotiation to violence, cooperation to conquest. But when pushed, when threatened, when our people are in danger..." Catherine stopped directly in front of the massive reptilian warrior who had terrorized half the galaxy. She looked up at him with those calm blue eyes. "We become something else entirely." Through the embassy's shattered windows, the first human warships could be seen approaching through the night sky. The Fifth Fleet had arrived, and with them came the full might of humanity's military. The diplomatic phase was over. Now came the reckoning.
6 hours later, Catherine sat in the embassy's secured communications room, her torn gown replaced by a simple black uniform bearing the insignia of Terran Special Command. The transformation was complete. Lady Catherine Ashford was gone, and Colonel Catherine Ashford was home.
Admiral Sarah Chen's face filled the holographic display, her expression grim despite their tactical victory. "Colonel, I need to understand how this operation was compromised. Our intelligence suggested the Dominion wanted to negotiate, not stage a military action against a diplomatic envoy." Catherine leaned back in her chair, feeling exhaustion settling into her bones. It had been 3 months since she'd been able to drop her cover identity, 3 months of constant performance and careful manipulation. "Admiral, with respect, our intelligence was never wrong. The Dominion Council did want to negotiate. It's the individual faction leaders who had other plans." The aftermath of the embassy incident had been swift and decisive. When the human fleet arrived in system, they found 3 Dominion battlecruisers and a dozen smaller vessels positioned around the planet. What should have been a tense standoff had instead become a rout when the alien crews realized they were facing the legendary Fifth Fleet. More importantly, they learned that their easy target at the embassy had been Colonel Catherine Ashford, the woman who had almost single-handedly ended the Vega Rebellion. "Tell me about Operation Silk Glove," Admiral Chen said. "From the beginning." Catherine nodded and activated her personal files. It began 14 months ago when Ambassador Richard Ashford died in that shuttle accident near Proxima Station. Natural causes, as far as we could determine, but his death left Earth without representation during a critical period in galactic politics. The plan that followed had been audacious, even by Terran Special Command standards. Rather than appoint a new ambassador and risk months of political maneuvering, they had decided to continue using Richard Ashford's diplomatic credentials. The only problem was finding someone who could convincingly play his daughter. The physical resemblance was remarkable, Admiral Chen observed, reviewing Catherine's file. Same height, same coloring, similar bone structure, but you had no diplomatic training. "I didn't need diplomatic training, Admiral. I needed acting training." Catherine smiled at the memory. 3 months of intensive coaching with the best civilian instructors money could buy. Voice coaches, etiquette experts, fashion consultants. They taught me how to walk like nobility, how to speak like privilege, how to be everything I'd spent my career fighting against. The irony hadn't been lost on her. Catherine had grown up in the factory districts of New Chicago, earned her education through military service, and built her career by being tougher and smarter than everyone around her. Playing a pampered aristocrat had been the most challenging mission of her life. The psychological evaluation flagged concerns about long-term identity maintenance. Admiral Chen continued. Dr. Martinez warned that extended deep cover could cause permanent personality changes. Catherine had read those reports. The human mind wasn't designed to maintain false identities for extended periods, especially when those identities conflicted with core personality traits. Military psychologists had documented cases of soldiers losing themselves in their covers, becoming unable to separate their true identity from their assumed role. "Dr. Martinez was wrong about one thing," Catherine said. "I never lost sight of who I was. Every smile I gave those alien bastards, every polite conversation about trade agreements and cultural exchanges, every moment I had to play the helpless little flower. It just reminded me why I became a soldier in the first place. The real challenge hadn't been maintaining her cover. It had been restraining herself from action when she learned about Dominion plans for humanity. The intelligence we gathered was invaluable." Admiral Chen agreed. "We know about their military positions, their political divisions, their assessment of human capabilities. But was it worth the risk?" Catherine thought about that question. For 14 months, she had been the only human deep inside alien political circles. She had attended strategy sessions disguised as diplomatic receptions, overheard military communications during cultural events, and built a comprehensive picture of how the galaxy's major powers viewed humanity. The picture wasn't pretty. Most alien species saw humans as a minor power that had achieved interstellar travel through luck rather than capability. They believed human military strength was limited, human technology inferior, and human resolve untested. The Dominion Council had been planning to simply absorb human space, either through negotiation or conquest. "We learned something crucial, Admiral. They're afraid of us, but they don't know why." Admiral Chen raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Every species in the galaxy achieved interstellar travel the same way. Gradual technological advancement over thousands of years, careful expansion, building on the work of previous civilizations. Humans went from first flight to faster-than-light travel in less than 2 centuries. We've spread across 24 star systems in just 50 years. We fought wars against superior forces and won through tactics no one else would attempt." Catherine pulled up a star chart showing human expansion compared to other species. The difference was stark. Where alien civilizations showed steady, predictable growth patterns, human space looked like an explosion of activity. They know we're dangerous, but they can't figure out how or why. So they've decided to eliminate the threat before it grows larger. The Dominion's plan had been elegant in its simplicity. Capture or kill Earth's diplomatic representative, claim it was a terrorist action by human extremists. then use the resulting chaos to justify military intervention. By the time Earth could respond, human colonies would be under alien control and the home system would be isolated. They hadn't counted on their helpless target being one of humanity's most decorated combat veterans. The psychological profiles on alien leadership were particularly interesting, Admiral Chen noted. General Craxon, for instance. Catherine's expression darkened. Craxon is exactly what he appears to be, a sociopathic monster who enjoys causing pain. But he's also politically naive. He genuinely believes that might makes right, that superior force automatically grants moral authority. It was a common trait among many alien military leaders. They had risen to power through conquest and domination, creating hierarchies based purely on strength. The concept of voluntary cooperation, of choosing not to use superior force, was alien to their thinking. They can't understand why we haven't conquered them already, Catherine continued. We have advantages they don't comprehend: adaptability, creativity, willingness to sacrifice for abstract principles. They see these as weaknesses because they can't quantify them. Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. And now they know the truth about our capabilities. Some of them do. Others will refuse to believe it until we're standing on their home worlds. Catherine smiled grimly. The best part is, they still don't understand what makes us dangerous. They think it's about individual combat skills or tactical innovation. The real secret of human success wasn't superior technology or brilliant strategy. It was something much simpler and infinitely more powerful. The willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect their own people, regardless of the cost to themselves. Catherine had spent 14 months surrounded by aliens who saw conquest as natural and genocide as expedient. They had treated her with condescending politeness while planning to enslave her species. Now they would learn what humans were truly capable of when their survival was at stake. The Dominion's response came 18 hours later, and it was everything Catherine had expected. Overwhelming force applied without mercy. 37 capital ships dropping out of hyperspace, reported Lieutenant Commander Hayes from the bridge of the TSS Indomitable. Battle cruisers, dreadnoughts, and carrier vessels. They're not planning to negotiate. Catherine stood beside Admiral Chen on the flagship's bridge, watching the tactical display update with new contact signatures. The Dominion had committed nearly a quarter of their total fleet strength to this engagement. More ships than they had used to conquer entire star systems. They're really taking this personally, Admiral Chen observed. I count representatives from 6 different alien militaries. The Centaurians, Andromedans, Martonians, even some Elysian Guard vessels. When was the last time we saw this kind of unified response from the Dominion? Never, Catherine replied. They're scared. Word of what happened at the embassy has spread through their command structure, and they're realizing that everything they thought they knew about human capabilities was wrong. The human fleet was outnumbered 3-1, but Catherine wasn't concerned. She had helped plan this engagement for months, using intelligence gathered during her diplomatic mission. Every alien ship position, every command structure weakness, every tactical doctrine had been analyzed and prepared for. More importantly, the aliens were still making the same fundamental error that had cost them at the embassy. They assumed humans would fight like everyone else in the galaxy, cautiously, predictably, with careful consideration for losses and strategic position. Admiral, Catherine said, request permission to transfer to the assault ship Sparta. I believe ground operations will be necessary to resolve this situation. Admiral Chen looked at her with surprise. Colonel, your intelligence value is too high to risk in frontline combat. You should remain on the flagship where you're safe. Catherine's smile was sharp as a blade. Admiral, with respect, I didn't spend 14 months pretending to be helpless just so I could hide behind armor plating when the shooting started. Besides, I have a personal score to settle with General Craxon. The Dominion fleet was moving into attack formation. Their massive ships deploying in the textbook patterns taught at military academies across the galaxy, heavy vessels in front to absorb damage, carriers protected in the center, fast attack craft on the flanks for harassment strikes. It was a formation designed to crush opponents through superior firepower and coordinated assault. It was also exactly what Catherine had predicted they would do. Admiral Chen to all ships, came the announcement over the fleet communication system. Execute Operation Thunderclap. All vessels implement irregular warfare protocols. Give them what they expect, then show them what they never imagined. The human fleet suddenly scattered, abandoning traditional formation and spreading across space in what appeared to be complete chaos. To alien observers, it looked like the humans were either retreating or had lost all command coordination. Neither was true. Catherine reached the assault ship Sparta just as the first exchange of fire began. Through the viewports, she could see energy beams and missile trails crisscrossing space as the two fleets engaged. The Dominion ships were firing in disciplined volleys, targeting what they assumed were the most important human vessels. They were shooting at decoys. Sparta Actual. This is Colonel Ashford requesting immediate transport to Centaurus Prime Surface. I have priority targets that require personal attention. The ship's captain, a grizzled veteran named Morrison, grinned at her through the communication screen. Colonel, I heard about your performance at the embassy. Be my honor to give you a ride to the party. The assault ship Sparta was built for one purpose: getting human soldiers onto hostile ground and keeping them alive long enough to complete their mission. It was fast, heavily armored, and equipped with the most advanced stealth technology in human space. As they approached the planet, Catherine could see the orbital defense stations opening fire on other human ships. The aliens had positioned their strongest defenses around the government complex where the Dominion Council met. They expected humans to attempt a direct assault on the political leadership. Instead, Catherine's target was a seemingly insignificant military communication center on the planet's northern continent. Intelligence gathered during her diplomatic mission had revealed that this facility controlled all Dominion fleet coordination in this sector. Destroy it, and the alien fleet would lose the ability to coordinate their attacks. 30 seconds to drop, announced the pilot. Hostile contacts detected on the surface, but nothing our escorts can't handle. Catherine checked her equipment one final time. Gone was the elegant gown and jewelry of Lady Catherine Ashford. In their place was the matte black combat armor of Terran Special Forces, equipped with energy shields, advanced sensors, and enough firepower to level a city block. The assault ship's bay doors opened, and Catherine dove into the planet's atmosphere without hesitation. Behind her, other members of her strike team followed, their armor's stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible to ground-based sensors. The communication facility was exactly where intelligence had indicated: a massive complex built into the side of a mountain, protected by energy barriers and automated defense systems. Under normal circumstances, it would take a full battalion of soldiers weeks to breach those defenses. Catherine wasn't planning a normal assault. She landed a kilometer away from the target and immediately began moving toward the facility. Her armor's sensors detected dozens of guard patrols, automated turrets, and flying surveillance drones. The aliens had built this place to withstand conventional attack. They hadn't prepared for Catherine Ashford. Moving through the forest surrounding the facility, Catherine used every skill she had learned in 20 years of military service. She disabled sensor networks with precisely placed charges, neutralized guard patrols with silent weapons, and hacked automated systems with equipment designed specifically for alien technology. By the time she reached the facility's outer perimeter, she had created a corridor of silence through their defenses. The aliens inside the complex had no idea that humanity's most dangerous soldier was walking through their front door. Strike Team Alpha to all units, Catherine whispered into her communication system. Primary target is in sight. Beginning final approach. Through her armor's enhanced vision, she could see General Craxon inside the facility's command center, directing the orbital battle from a massive holographic display. The reptilian warlord was confident in his superior numbers, certain that his fleet would crush the human forces within hours. Catherine smiled inside her helmet. It was time to teach the general another lesson about human capabilities. The final phase of the mission was about to begin, and Catherine intended to deliver a very personal message about the price of threatening humanity. She activated her armor's assault protocols and began her approach to the facility's main entrance. Behind her, the rest of her strike team moved into position for the coordinated attack that would cripple the Dominion fleet and demonstrate, once and for all, that humans were far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy had imagined. The facility's main entrance exploded inward as Catherine's shaped charges detonated simultaneously. Debris and smoke filled the corridor as alarm systems shrieked warnings throughout the complex. Security forces rushed toward the breach expecting to face a large assault force. Instead, they found one human woman in black armor walking through the destruction like an unstoppable force of nature. Catherine's first target was the guard station controlling internal security. 2 Martonian soldiers raised their weapons, but her return fire was faster and more accurate. The advanced human energy rifle in her hand spoke 3 times, and both guards fell without firing a shot. She moved deeper into the facility with clinical precision, her armor's sensors mapping every corridor and identifying hostile positions. The aliens had built this place like a fortress, with multiple defensive layers and overlapping fields of fire. Against a conventional assault, it would have been nearly impregnable. Catherine wasn't conventional. A squad of Centaurian guards rushed around a corner, their insectoid features twisted with determination. Catherine's response was instant. A small grenade rolled along the floor, releasing a cloud of neural disruptor gas that dropped all 6 aliens before they could react. Non-lethal, but effective. She had learned long ago that unnecessary killing only created more enemies. Fear and respect properly applied were far more useful than corpses. Intruder alert. Intruder alert! All units converge on Corridor 7. The facility's communication system crackled with panicked voices speaking in multiple alien languages. Catherine paused at a junction and activated her armor's battlefield intelligence system. The AI analyzed enemy movement patterns, predicted response times, and calculated optimal routes to her target. Information flowed across her helmet's display, turning the chaotic battle into a series of tactical problems to be solved. A heavy weapons platform rounded the corner ahead, its multiple gun barrels tracking toward her position. Catherine dove sideways as energy beams carved chunks from the wall where she had been standing. She rolled behind cover and assessed the situation. The weapons platform was too heavily armored for her rifle to penetrate, and it was positioned to cover the only route to the command center. A standard military solution would require heavy explosives or a coordinated assault by multiple soldiers. Catherine chose a different approach. She pulled a small device from her belt and threw it down the corridor. The device bounced harmlessly off the weapons platform's armor and came to rest nearby. The alien operators probably dismissed it as a failed grenade or damaged equipment. It was actually a holographic projector. Suddenly, the corridor filled with multiple images of Catherine, each one running in a different direction. The weapons platform's targeting system, designed to track single targets, became confused and began firing wildly at the illusions. While the automated guns were distracted, Catherine sprinted directly at the platform and leaped onto its upper surface. A precisely placed charge on the main power coupling disabled the entire system without harming the crew inside. The facility's defenders were learning what human soldiers had known for generations. Catherine Ashford didn't just fight her enemies, she outthought them. She reached the command center's outer door and paused to examine the security system. Biometric scanners, energy barriers, and automated defenses protected the entrance. Breaking through would require several minutes of careful work. Time she didn't have as more guards converged on her position, unless she used the master access code she had memorized. During those diplomatic receptions, amazing how aliens would discuss security protocols over dinner when they assumed their guests couldn't understand technical language. Catherine input the authorization sequence and smiled as the massive doors slid open. General Craxon stood in the center of the command center, his reptilian features twisted with rage as he watched the holographic display showing the space battle above. His fleet was losing, their coordination disrupted by the communication blackout Catherine's team had already begun implementing. "General," Catherine said calmly as she walked into the room, "I believe we have unfinished business." Craxon spun around, his clawed hands reaching for the ceremonial sword at his side. "You, impossible. This facility is impregnable." "So is your fleet," Catherine replied. "So is your political alliance. So is your entire assessment of human military capabilities. You're having a very bad day, General." Around the command center, alien technicians and officers backed away from the confrontation. None of them wanted to be caught between these two predators when the violence inevitably erupted. Craxon drew his sword, a massive curved blade that had taken hundreds of lives across the galaxy. "I will kill you myself, human. I will show the galaxy that your species bleeds like any other." Catherine set down her rifle and drew her own weapon, a simple combat knife with a polymer blade. Compared to Craxon's massive sword, it looked almost pathetic. General, you still don't understand what you're facing. This isn't about strength or superior weapons. This is about something you've never encountered before in your entire military career. Kraxon charged forward with surprising speed for such a massive creature. His sword swept through the air where Catherine's head had been, but she was no longer there. She had dropped low and rolled to his left, using his momentum against him. The knife in her hand found the gap in his armor between shoulder plates, sliding between bone and muscle to strike a nerve cluster. Kraxon's left arm went numb and his sword clattered to the floor. You want to know what makes humans dangerous? Catherine continued as the general stumbled backward, clutching his paralyzed arm. It's not that we're stronger or smarter than other species. It's that we never stop learning, never stop adapting, never stop finding new ways to solve problems. Kraxon lunged at her with his remaining good arm, trying to grapple her to the ground where his superior mass would be an advantage. Catherine stepped inside his reach and struck upward with the base of her palm, connecting with his solar plexus and driving the breath from his lungs. You conquered 17 star systems using the same tactics every time, she said as the general gasped for air. Overwhelming force, orbital bombardment, terror tactics? It worked because you faced species who thought the same way you do. The general tried to call for assistance from his guards, but his vocal cords weren't cooperating properly. Catherine's strikes had been precisely calculated to disable his ability to coordinate a response. Humans fight differently, General. We improvise, we adapt. We use whatever we have at hand, and we never give up until the job is done. Catherine grabbed Kraxon's ceremonial belt and used it to bind his hands behind his back. The massive reptilian warrior, terror of the Outer Rim, was helpless against a human woman half his size. Your fleet is defeated, your communication network is destroyed, and your reputation is in ruins. The entire galaxy will know that the mighty General Kraxon was captured by a single human soldier. She activated the facility's main communication array and opened a channel to all Dominion ships in the Yao system. Attention Dominion forces. This is Colonel Catherine Ashford of Terran Special Forces. Your command structure has been neutralized, your coordination network is offline, and your ground-based leadership is in human custody. You have one opportunity to withdraw from this system peacefully. The response came from the lead Dominion battleship, its captain's voice tight with barely controlled fury. We will never surrender to humans. We will fight until every ship is destroyed. Catherine looked at General Kraxon, who was glaring at her with undisguised hatred. Tell your ships to stand down, General. You've lost this engagement. Kraxon's voice was a low growl. I would rather die than submit to your species. Catherine nodded thoughtfully. That can be arranged. But first let me show you something. She activated the command center's tactical display and enhanced the view of the space battle. The Dominion fleet was indeed being systematically destroyed, but not through superior firepower. Human ships were using tactics that defied conventional military doctrine. Ramming attacks, coordinated swarm maneuvers, and suicide runs that should have been impossible with trained crews. You see, General, you made one final mistake in your assessment of humanity. You assumed we value our own lives more than our principles, that we would choose survival over victory. The display showed a human destroyer deliberately crashing into a Dominion carrier, both ships exploding in a brilliant fireball that illuminated the battlefield. Those pilots knew they weren't coming home, General. They chose to die so that others might live. That's what you're really fighting, a species that will sacrifice everything to protect what they believe in. For the first time since Catherine had known him, General Kraxon looked genuinely afraid. The final phase of the battle was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. 3 weeks later, Catherine stood on the observation deck of the TSS Indomitable, watching as diplomatic vessels from across the galaxy arrived for emergency peace negotiations. The ships came in all sizes and configurations, representing dozens of species that had previously considered humanity a minor inconvenience. Now they came as supplicants, seeking accommodation with a power they had finally recognized as dangerous. The Andromedan High Council has agreed to all territorial concessions, Admiral Chen reported, joining Catherine at the viewport. The Centaurians are offering exclusive mining rights in the Vega sector, and even the Elysian nobility has sent gifts of apology. Catherine nodded without enthusiasm. The victory felt hollow after seeing how quickly her enemies had transformed into groveling allies. And the Martonians? Complete submission. They've offered to serve as a buffer state between human space and hostile alien territories. General Craxon's former subordinates are practically begging for the chance to prove their loyalty to Earth. The aftermath of the battle had been swift and decisive. Once word spread that the mighty General Craxon had been captured by a single human soldier, the psychological impact had rippled through every alien military in known space. Species that had spent centuries building reputations for invincibility suddenly faced the terrifying possibility that they might not be as superior as they believed. The intelligence. Reports make for interesting reading, Admiral Chen continued. Apparently, half the galaxy's military academies are restructuring their curricula to account for human tactical doctrine, whatever that means. Catherine smiled at that. Human tactical doctrine wasn't really a doctrine at all. It was simply the willingness to do whatever the situation required, regardless of how unconventional or costly it might be. Aliens studied it like a mathematical formula, trying to codify something that couldn't be reduced to rules and regulations. Any word from the Dominion Council? They've requested a formal audience with Earth's senior leadership. They want to negotiate a comprehensive peace treaty, including reparations for the attempted attack on our diplomatic mission. Through the viewport, Catherine could see the massive Dominion flagship approaching the human fleet. Its weapons were powered down, its shields lowered in the universal gesture of peaceful intent. The same ship that had arrived 3 weeks earlier, bristling with hostile energy, now approached like a whipped dog seeking forgiveness. They're terrified, Catherine observed. Not just of our military capabilities, but of what we represent. The real revelation hadn't been humanity's combat prowess or technological innovation. It had been the demonstration that an entire species could act with unified purpose when their survival was at stake. Alien civilizations had always been fractured by competing interests, political divisions, and species-based prejudices. They couldn't comprehend how humans could coordinate across vast distances without central authority, how individual soldiers could make strategic decisions without detailed orders, how an entire fleet could function as a single organism. The psychological evaluation teams have been busy, Admiral Chen noted. Dr. Martinez wants to interview you about the long-term effects of deep cover operations. Catherine had submitted to the mandatory debriefings, answering endless questions about her 14 months as Lady Catherine Ashford. The psychologists were fascinated by how she had maintained her core identity while successfully impersonating someone completely different. They wanted to understand how she had resisted the mental conditioning that usually accompanied extended undercover work. The answer was simpler than they expected. She had never forgotten who she was fighting for. "Colonel," came a voice from behind them. "You have a visitor." Catherine turned to see a familiar figure approaching across the observation deck. Ambassador Zekthor moved with the uncertain gait of someone still recovering from psychological trauma. The insectoid diplomat had requested this meeting personally, and Catherine was curious about his motives. Colonel Ashford," Zekthor began, his mandibles clicking nervously. "I wanted to apologize for my behavior during the diplomatic reception. I realize now that my people gravely underestimated your species." "No apology necessary, Ambassador. You were doing what you believed was best for your people." Zekthor's compound eyes studied her with something approaching wonder. "How do you do it? How do you maintain such civility after everything that has happened? My people, the Dominion leadership, we all treated you as if you were some primitive creature to be manipulated and discarded. Yet now you speak to me as if we were equals." Catherine considered the question carefully. It was the same thing that mystified alien observers throughout the galaxy. Humanity's ability to separate individual relationships from political conflicts. "Ambassador, you weren't personally responsible for General Craxon's actions, any more than I'm personally responsible for every human military operation. Holding individuals accountable for the decisions of their governments is a path to endless hatred. But surely you must feel anger, resentment, the desire for revenge." Catherine smiled, remembering her conversation with Craxon in the command center. "I feel satisfaction that justice was served and my people are safe. Everything else is just waste of energy that could be better used building a more stable future." It was a fundamentally human perspective that few alien species could understand. The ability to forgive without forgetting, to move forward without abandoning principles, to build bridges while maintaining strength. "The Centaurian government has offered me a new position," Zekthor continued. Ambassador to Earth, they want someone who has personal experience with human capabilities to manage future relations. Congratulations, Ambassador. I suspect you'll do well in the role. As Zekthor departed, Admiral Chen shook her head in amazement. 3 weeks ago, he was part of a conspiracy to eliminate human influence in galactic politics. Now he's practically applying for citizenship. Fear is a powerful motivator, Catherine replied, but it's not a foundation for lasting peace. These negotiations will determine whether we build something stable or just postpone the next war. A communication signal chimed, indicating an incoming message from Earth. Admiral Chen activated the holographic display, and the familiar face of Fleet Admiral Torres appeared. Admiral Chen, Colonel Ashford, congratulations on a successful operation. The Joint Chiefs are impressed by the strategic intelligence gathered during Operation Silk Glove, and the President wants to personally commend Colonel Ashford for her service. Catherine nodded respectfully. Thank you, Admiral Torres. Request permission to remain on station for the peace negotiations. I believe my diplomatic experience might prove useful. Admiral Torres smiled. Actually, Colonel, that's why I'm calling. Earth Command has a new assignment for you. We're establishing a permanent diplomatic corps specifically for dealing with alien civilizations, and we need someone to head the program, someone who understands both human military doctrine and alien political psychology. The offer wasn't entirely unexpected. Catherine had spent more time inside alien power structures than any other human alive, and her unique experience made her invaluable for future diplomatic missions. Will I still be Colonel Ashford? Or will you need me to become someone else? You'll be yourself, Colonel. The days of hiding what humanity is capable of are over. From now on, when our diplomatic representatives sit down at the negotiating table, everyone will know exactly who and what they're dealing with. Catherine looked out at the assembled alien fleets, their weapons silent and their crews waiting nervously for humanity's decision about the future. The masquerade was over. No more pretending to be weak, naive, or helpless. No more allowing other species to underestimate human resolve or capability. The galaxy had demanded to know what humanity truly was. Now they would have to live with the answer. I accept the assignment, Admiral Torres. When do I start? Immediately, Colonel. The first session of the Galactic Peace Conference begins in 6 hours, and you'll be leading the human delegation. As the communication ended, Catherine realized that her greatest challenge was just beginning. It was one thing to win a war through superior tactics and determination. It was quite another to win a peace that would protect humanity's future, while building stable relationships with dozens of alien civilizations. But then, Catherine had never backed down from a challenge in her life. She wasn't about to start now. The galaxy was about to learn that Colonel Catherine Ashford was just as dangerous in a diplomatic conference room as she was on a battlefield, and this time she wouldn't need to hide who she was.